In Brazil, polls closed as Brazilians choose between incumbent Jair Bolsonaro and former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov described as alarming Poland's willingness to host U.S. nuclear weapons on its territory. Outgoing Lebanese President Michel Aoun stepped down a day before his mandate expires and without a designated successor. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin. This Sunday, over 156 million Brazilians are called to participate in the second round of elections to choose the next president of the country. Brazilians choose between the former president and a presidential candidate of the Workers' Party, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and the current president, the right-wing Jair Bolsonaro, in a very polarized election. Voting centers open in 5,570 cities of the country at 8 a.m. local time and closed at 5 p.m. Voting will also take place in 181 locations abroad. The Superior Electoral Court of Brazil set up 472,750 voting stations throughout the country for this new election day. The voting system in the South American giant is electronic, and the results of the ballots will be announced a few hours after the end of the electoral process. As polls closed in Brazil's presidential runoff, vote counting is underway. With only 8.71% of votes counted, current President Jair Bolsonaro is leading the race with 52.22%. Former President Lula da Silva now has 47.78%. However, let us remember these are very early on figures. The voting is only less than 9% of the votes counted, so they are expected to change since all polling stations gave Lula da Silva as the favorite for this presidential runoff. Brazil's Superior Electoral Court requested explanations from the Federal Highway Police for carrying out operations that obstructed transit. The electoral body summoned the General Director of the Federal Highway Police, Silvane Vasquez, to urgently explain the reasons for which police operations are being carried out in the states. The order was requested by the President of the Court, Alexandre de Moraes, to inform under what legality the police are carrying out retention operations that are affecting voters' mobility. It all started after the publication of a video in which a citizen affirms that the police are carrying out a blockade at the entrance of the city of Cuite in Paraíba. More than 697,000 Brazilians can vote in 181 cities abroad. This figure is 40% higher compared to 2018 elections and almost doubles the number registered in 2014. According to the electoral authorities, this is a historical record of electoral participation outside the country. In Portugal, more than 80,000 Brazilians went to the polls, and it was reaffirmed as the largest electoral college outside Brazil. In Lisbon, it was recorded that more than 45,000 people voted, and Brazilians were also able to cast their ballots in the city of Porto. Brazilians living abroad also voted in New Zealand, Australia, and South Korea, where, according to preliminary counts, Lula got a lead. After casting his ballot in São Paulo, former Brazilian President and current candidate Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said he is confident in the victory of democracy.
The people are defining today the model of life they want. That is why this is the most important day of my life, because I am standing as a candidate today, and I am convinced that the Brazilian people will vote for a project in which democracy will win.
Current Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro said the country will be victorious after casting his ballot in a tight presidential runoff against candidate Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva.
I've only had good news in the last few days. God willing, we will be victorious later today, or even better, Brazil will be victorious later today. We have
Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back from the South. In Mexico, former Guerrero State Police Chief Leonardo Octavio Vázquez Perez was arrested for his links to the criminal organization Guerreros Unidos, allegedly responsible for the disappearance and murder of 43 Ayotzinapa students back in September 2014. Vázquez, a retired military, was apprehended in the town of Tepic in Nayarit, along with 2 other unidentified individuals. In all, 83 arrest warrants have been issued for suspects with responsibility in the Ayotzinapa case. The charges against Vázquez include involvement in organized crime, forced disappearance, torture, homicide, and obstruction of justice. Other prominent figures under the investigation in this case are former Guerrero Superior Court of Justice President Lambertina Galeana Marin and former Attorney General Iñaki Blanco. In Peru, the country's environmental monitoring agency has announced that the Spanish oil company Repsol has been fined on 6 accounts with a total of $10.5 million. Last January 15th, Repsol dumped some 11,000 barrels of crude oil into the Peruvian Sea at Ventanilla, an event described by international agency as the worst environmental disaster in Peru's recent history. Repsol has been found liable and guilty of providing false information in the initial emergency report regarding the area affected and the approximate volume of spilled oil, for failing to act consequently in containing and recovering the spilled oil, and for not undertaking soil cleaning actions in the affected area. Meanwhile, Repsol has declared it is advancing in the compensation process for the 10,300 families of fishermen affected by the consequences of the spill, in keeping with United Nations guidelines set by the United Nations. In France, a recent poll pondering political landscape points to a rerun of the 2017 and 2022 runoff elections between French President Emmanuel Macron and the leader of the far-right Marine Le Pen. As in the 3 previous presidential elections, the French Public Opinion Institute asked a sample of voters who they would vote for 6 months after the April election, in which Macron secured another 5 years in the top post. According to the survey, Le Pen got 30% of support, up from 23.5% 6 months ago, while the head of state got 29%. The figures placed them in a technical tie considering the margin of error. The poll also placed the leader of France, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, with 17% after reaching 21.5% in April and then remaining at the gates of the ballot. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov described as alarming Poland's willingness to host U.S. nuclear weapons on its territory. Lavrov pointed out that Moscow seriously considers Warsaw's intention and warned that with this decision the country could participate in a nuclear sharing program which would allow it to possess such weapons as NATO members. In this connection, Lavrov stressed that the claims of the U.S., NATO and the European Union about the need to defeat Russia hide Washington's inability to give up its desire to rule the world. And on Sunday, the Ukrainian forces carried out an attack on the electric infrastructure of the city of Energodar in Zaporizhia. Following the attack, the city was left without electricity supply, and emergency crews are working to repair the damage and restore service shortly. The city of Energodar is home to the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, the largest in Europe. Its reactors are currently shut down to minimize the risk of exposure due to the ongoing armed conflict. The Russian Ministry of Defense revealed details of the drone attack launched by Ukraine against the ships of the Russian Black Sea Fleet and civilian vessels anchored in Sevastopol Bay in Crimea. Meanwhile, the security authorities stated that data collected from one of the marine drones indicated a launching point in waters of the security zone of the Grand Corridor in the Black Sea. Experts conclude this may indicate the preliminary launch of the drone from one of the civilian ships chartered by Kiev or its Western sponsors to export agricultural products from the Ukrainian seaports. On Sunday, Russia's ambassador to the U.S., Anatoly Antonov, backed Russia's decision to step down from the grain agreement because of the danger of attack on its merchant ships in the Black Sea. In statements to the press, the Russian diplomat explained that the decision was taken after attacks and provocations against Russian military and civilian ships participating in the initiative to transport grain. He considered it unfair to single out Russia for suspending the agreement since the action was a response to Kiev's provocation. On the subject, Antonov described as outrageous the reaction of the U.S. to the attack to Russian ships in Sevastopol Bay by Ukrainian drones. More news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the South. On Sunday, outgoing Lebanese President Michael Aoun vacated the presidential palace a day before his mandate expires without a designated successor, threatening a new power vacuum in the country. Lebanese lawmakers have tried and failed 4 times in months to agree on electing a successor after President Aoun's next 6-year term ends on Monday, increasing fears of deepening political crisis. A few thousand well-wishers gathered outside the presidential palace in the hills above the capital Beirut to pay tribute to the head of the Free Patriotic Movement and later accompanied him to his private home. This situation came at a time when Lebanon has yet to enact most of the reforms required for it to access billions of dollars in loans from the International Monetary Fund.
Today, I see, in all of you, men of resistance, most of you were with me in the first battle, after which men, students, no one, feared the gun, nor the prison, nor the beating stick. You kept resisting until we returned to the homeland, which we defend and pay for with our blood.
In Syria, the number of deaths from cholera has risen to 46, while more than 1,000 confirmed cases of infection have been reported since the start of the new outbreak in September. According to a statement issued by the Syrian Health Ministry, 2 new deaths from cholera were reported on Sunday. Authorities say that fatal cases are concentrated in the province of Aleppo, which has registered a total of 39 deaths from the disease. Meanwhile, the cumulative number of confirmed infections stands at 1,097 cases in at least 6 cities. According to the infection, the increase in fatalities and patients reported critical is due to delays in seeking medical attention. The Palestinian authorities have condemned the escalation of systematic attacks by Israeli settlers and their armed militias against the civilian population in Palestine. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry denounces requests from illegal settlements for Tel Aviv to provide them with increasingly lethal weapons. The office repudiates the Israeli government's strategy of using settlers to intimidate and oppress Palestinians while continuing to plunder their land. According to human rights organizations, there are 490,000 settlers in Jerusalem and another 200,000 on the east. The Somali government reported Sunday that the death toll from the Saturday explosion of 2 car bombs in the capital Mogadishu has risen to 100. The explosions blew out windows of nearby buildings and it sent shrapnel and clouds of smoke and dust into the air. Among the fatalities, there were mothers with their children in their backs. The attack happened at the same intersection where a previous terrorist explosion had occurred on October 14, 2017, when a truck laden with explosives killed 512 people. Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud visited the area of the explosion and said that the number of wounded has reached 300 and warned that the death toll could rise in the coming hours. Somali jihadist group Al-Shabaab, which regularly targets Somalia's capital and major cities, claimed responsibility for the attack. China's Foreign Affairs Minister Wang Wenbin has denounced that the United States continues with provocations in a confrontation policy that could lead to a Cold War using nuclear weapons as a diplomatic tool. The Chinese official recalled that the United States has the largest nuclear arsenal in the world, which they use as a tool to push their geopolitical agenda. He said Washington's blackmail would not work with China because China has the capability to safeguard its interests. The statements were made after Washington published the 2022 Nuclear Position Review, which according to the Chinese diplomat exudes Cold War and a zero-sum mentality. In South Korea, President Yoon Suk-yeol announced a period of national mourning after a deadly stampede killed at least 153 people and injured another 134 during Halloween celebrations in Seoul. On Sunday, the head of state declared a period of national mourning, saying the government would pay for the medical care of those injured and the funerals of those who died. He also said the government would thoroughly investigate the cause of the incident and make fundamental improvements to ensure the same accident does not occur again. Seoul's Interior Ministry, Lee Sang-min, told that most of the victims were young women that not overpassed 20s, and eyewitnesses described being trapped in a narrow sloping alleyway and scrambling to get out of the suffocating crowd as people pile on top of one another. We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.